Yo, safe. Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Happy day. It's GMTK time. I'm quite excited. I'm very excited. I've been waiting for years to take part in this jam, and I think we've got a really cool idea. So, Pete and Rob and I, Team Submarine, aka Team Submarine, had a little call last night after the theme was announced. The theme is loop, and we have an idea to make a sort of platforming, planet building, god game type situation. So the easiest thing is if I show you the prototype. I've been working this morning on kind of tidying up the maths, basically. If I just put 0 in there so it doesn't give an error for now, I should be able to show you the prototype we built last night. Here it is. So you can run around. We're just using the Aquaboy sprite for now. But the idea is that you run around this planet, and wherever you go, you're like some kind of god of creation. So wherever you go, you leave more terrain. You like adding stone or mud or whatever we make it be, like from a visual point of view further down the line. See, it's glitchy. But it's this kind of platforming, and we're going to have something chasing you, so you have to keep going around the planet, and you can stop if you want for a moment and do some platforming, and there'll be things that will force you to jump, but you're going to have to keep moving around the planet like this and looping around. And wherever you go, you are going to leave this platform. And so the idea is to build the biggest planet that you can before you die or get caught or stuck or something. So you can kind of see where the kind of emergent gameplay and complexity should hopefully come from here. But this rather rough prototype that I made yesterday is not mathematically sound. We're just dumping these slightly wedge-shaped collision boxes down, and what I really want is a proper polar grid. So that's what we're doing now in this script here, is starting to build out, defining sort of points around the concentric circles upon which those wedges will be created. And we can define those points at regular intervals and then resize the bricks. We call them a brick, but like this wedge piece, we can resize that as we spawn it in to match the size of the space it's filling. So that's my aim for today. I've got something to go out and do in the evening for a couple of hours of rehearsal. But it's 1 o'clock now, and I can go until 5. So I've got 4 hours now, and then I'll get back from my rehearsal about 9 p.m. and we'll probably do another 4 hours or so then. So I'm thinking 8 hours of streaming today. I've already done about an hour on this morning, just messing around and kind of planning what I'm going to build. So now we're going to do it, and it's going to be a lot of writing this script and thinking about maths. So the first thing I want to think about here, and a lot of this stuff might be really obvious to any viewers, so let me know. But we're sort of setting up our grid data is going to be an array, sort of two-dimensional array, an array with made up of arrays. So the first layer of the arrays is going to be the number of circles. So we'll have each of the kind of concentric circles, but we're going to skip the first 3 layers, because the first 3 layers of 48 units are taken up. Got rid of that. Are taken up by the actual core of the planet. This is from this core that we've got here. The radius is 144. So 3 lots of 48. 3 lots of 48. Each layer is 48 currently, which I think works with the sprite, works with the screen resolution. I do have this set to full screen, but I don't want that anymore. I have that back to windowed. But what I want to do is, rather than defining how many segments there are on the circle, let me demonstrate this in Paint. Rather than defining how many segments there are on the circle, I want to define a minimum segment length. So let's say we have this, and then we have this, and then we have this, And then we have this. Okay. And then we have lines, you know, like this. Well, I think it's obvious now, just by splitting it into 8, say, that these segments on the outside here are much larger than the ones in the middle. So if we want all our segments that sort of size, then we probably want to introduce more subdivisions when we reach a certain point. So we want to be creating as many subdivisions as possible based on our minimum segment length. So let's say, in this case, I wanted, oh, God's sake. Paint, man. Who would use paint for anything? Okay. So like this length here, you know, might be acceptable. This length here might be acceptable. But then when we reach here, this one is more than twice the minimum length. So then we revert to these, right? And then it might be that when we get up to here, we can half it again. By doing it like this, always halving it, we'll never have overhangs. Because one of the issues we face with the way it's set up now is we can create like overhanging, it's kind of like that, right? And then we can get stuck in them and it's glitchy. Okay, I didn't get stuck then, but this kind of overhang is what I want to avoid. It should be like wherever you go, you're just building upwards, and every piece that gets placed must be supported by something underneath. So we never have overhangs. And so what we got to do is work out a way of working out at which point do we basically multiply the number of segments by 2. Because at each, we'll get to a certain distance where the circumference becomes big enough that we can add a whole nother layer of subdivisions. That's where I'm at the moment. So we need to work out the number of segments based on the rate. We've defined the radius here. So then we know what the circumference, the total circumference is. So circum is going to be 2 times pi times radius, yeah? Might as well just have that in there. Why have I got a little debugger? What's the problem? Radius declared but never used. No, okay, well we're using it now, and we would be using it anyway, but there we go. We've got the circumference. Is that how you spell circumference? With like an A at the top of the word like that? Or circumference. Okay, let's just call it circum, because that's too long. So the number of segments is going to be yes, this is tricky, isn't it? There's some sort of mathematical trick to do here. We want to say how many times does the minimum base like length go into this total circumference, and then we want to share. No, because then we might get overhangs. We sort of want to test, like, if we multiply it by 2. Yeah, because I don't want it to just divide it up. We want to basically say the number of subdivisions we're at currently has the length of the current subdivision got to the point where it's twice the minimum. Because if it's over twice the minimum, then we can add another subdivision layer, right? So we want to be checking in powers of 2, I suppose, going up. So we sort of say, can we fit 2 of this integer into the circumference? Yes, we can. Okay, well, can we fit 4 of it in? Yes, we can. Can we fit 8 of it in? Like, yes, we can. Can we fit 16? No. Okay, cool. So we have 8. And then we check each time. Can we fit 16? Yes. Can we fit 32? Yes. Can we fit 64? It will be like that. And I want to make this dynamic so we can change these variables later, but maybe I should just be hard coding this in because it would just be easier and quicker for a jam. But hopefully, like, let's spend half an hour on it. If it's just kicking my ass in half an hour's time, we might just abandon it. We also want to make a rough kind of plan, like a rough like roadmap for like the time that we have. So I think we've got like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? And today it's the polar grid, tidy collisions, and ideally like growing bricks, which we'll get to what that means later. And then and tomorrow I want to be adding in the enemy. What do we mean? What's like obstacles that I can never spell. Obstacles, enemy. Yeah, like projectiles. And destroying terrain as well, because we're creating terrain. We want the enemy that's chasing us to be destroying the terrain, I think. Then the idea is that by the end of tomorrow there's a game. So then like this could be like finish game loop, add level ups, or add like incremental difficulty, and sort of like polish gameplay, right? And then Sunday can be add assets, add menus, like art and audio, etc. Add the menus, and test, I guess. We probably want to be testing. Maybe we should do like a itch bio test build by the end of tomorrow. I think that's a good plan for how I'm going to spend my time. Obviously, we've got Pete taking care of the audio and Rob taking care of the art. So yeah, I think that's a rough plan of action for me now. And in fact, rather than keeping that here, I could just put it at the top of the player script. I quite like doing that. I've done that before with some of these kind of notes that I need to take. Ugh. Like that. There we go. Although it's kind of annoying because I sort of want it all like lined back up, I think. That'll be fine. Okay. Okay, there's our plan. Now, back to this script here. So I suppose the setup grid thing here, we want to start by creating a variable here called subdivisions or segment. Just num, I guess it's just num segments, isn't it? Let's just call it that. That's the clearest thing. Number of segments will start at 1. Okay, and then we just basically have to create like a loop where we keep multiplying it by 2 until we hit a point where it's like between as soon as it gets below 2 times the minimum base length, then we know it's we can't subdivide again. And in order for it to get below 20 when we're halving it, it would have to be below 40 first. Yeah, so that will just work. Okay, so then we create this at the start of setting up the grid, and the number of segments now, rather than having this variable be that, what we want to do is test that 1 against the circumference using this 20. So basically we want to say, and this is going to have to change into a loop, like a while. I think it's going to be a while, isn't it? Which I need to do a bit of research on. While loops aren't my forte yet. I understand the concept, I think. It's like a for loop that keeps going as long as the condition here is true, right? But let's just write it as an if statement first to get my head around it. We want to say if the number of segments multiplied by we want to say if the circumference divided by the number of segments is, and that's like got to be in brackets or something, if that is less than 40, is less than the segment minimum base length times by 2. So in this case, it's if the whole circumference over 1, i.e. if the circumference is larger we want to check this, and if it's true, then we proceed and we know how many segments it is. But if it's not true, then we need to double the number of segments and try again. Because it's only when the circumference divided by the number of segments is less than twice this that we know we can't double the number of segments again. So let me look up while loop Godot for examples. The for loop, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no. While loop. The while loop evaluates a Boolean expression, Boolean expression to decide whether to keep looping or exit the loop. Again, we may break out of the loop with a break statement or skip to the end of the statement block with the continue statement. So if we just say while the circumference divided by the number of segments, i.e. while the size of the segments we're about to make is greater than this magical number, then number of segments times 2. And then we'd do it again. And at that point, when this is finished, I don't think we need to put in a break or skip. I think this will just do that now. So this stuff's so hard for me to test as I go, though. I need to build some proper like way to visualize what I'm doing here. I just have to trust that I'm right. Evenly subdivided pizza message. I think we want to set a size for the block and then divide each ring into amount of slices that are as close to the defined size as possible. Yeah, I don't know if Pete's watching the stream now. If I can just reply by think talk. I thought about this, but the thing I'm trying to avoid with the doubling thing is overhangs. Like, we don't want that kind of thing going on because the player can still get stuck. I like the idea that everything the player builds is like a stack and it just always stacks from something that was already before it, you know, but that we don't get these kinds of things going on. Ultimately, though, we could swap it to the way you're suggesting probably quite easily. I think this is working for now, right? But it would just be a case of probably changing how we define what the number of segments are with a normal division there instead. And then for theta, in the range of the number of segments, I did also have like a little guide here, or a little example of how to map back from the ring and segment into a world position, which we definitely want eventually. What I'm thinking is that in this array, that's what we're going to store. We're going to store, well, there won't be global positions, there'll be positions relative to the center of the core, which we're then rotating. So there'll be local positions relative to the core, which is, yeah, what this script is on, so that should work. So for theta in the range, what we want to do is say that the grid data at I append and right here, this is where we will put the vector 2. So we'll store the vector 2 that will be the position of that spawn point. Yes, safe. Clockwork Village is here. Shout out to Pete. Go with your gut. Your way could be cool, as the height of the stack will determine the size, which makes sense too. My suggestion will make all the blocks roughly the same size. I'm going to make them all roughly the same size. They're only going to double at the point where they become like beyond the threshold, right? So they'll double every time. They'll be like an acceptable distance, and when it gets beyond that, it's going to go, okay, this is now twice the acceptable distance, so we can afford to half it. And then they'll grow slightly, and then, you know, so there will still all be similar. But your way will create like where like this ring will have a number of segments that's not necessarily a factor of the next ring or the next ring, and so we'll get like overlaps and things that hang over unevenly, whereas with my way they'll always be, every piece that you build will have ground directly below it. Maybe let's see. I think anyway we can swap between the two by just changing those two lines of code. But this vector 2 that we append here, this is going to be it's like the cosine of the angle and the sine of the angle for x and y, and that all multiplied by the radius. So what we need to do for each of these is define what that angle to that point is. And the angle, so wait, let me put this in here. We'll just put 0 there so it doesn't show me an error the whole time. And can we just use cos like that as a function? I think we can. I think that just works. And then sine as well. And I think that's the correct maths. I mean, I hope that's the correct maths. If not, then damn. But I think that is the way that you get from a angle and a radius, which is like polar grid reference. That's how you'd convert it into a vector too in like real space. Assuming the center of the circle is 0, 0 in that real space, which it is. So now we just need to know exactly what the angle to that point is. And that is going to be theta and the angle is going to be like 2 pi, right? Like the irradians of the whole circle. So it's like, it's theta multiplied by tau, which is just 2 pi, divided by the number of segments. So we're saying tau is the entire circle in radians, divide that by the number of segments, which is the kind of number of degrees that each segment takes up, and then multiply that by which segment we're on, and then append that. Okay, so then if I now print grid data, we should be able to make sense of this, or better yet, we could plot it. Like if we also drew, also I might just call theta t here because that just seems tidier. So should we try drawing it? Which I can remember I did. Would we want to draw, but like draw point? Draw. Maybe just draw a circle then. Position and radius and color. Yeah, position, radius and color should be fine. So we'll say here, draw circle. And we'll put that there. Its radius can just be 1 and the color can just be like white. And then let's, instead of printing it, is it called Q redraw? We did all this for the Aquaboy stuff before. Oh, equals number of segments times 2. Or can you just do multiply equals like that? Like how you do like plus equals? You probably can't you? I mean, if this works, I'll be astonished. No, it didn't. Oh, because we never called this. So for now, we'll just put it in the ready function. Could be cool to have the grid visible. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Insert Me's is a big fan of my gameplay. My gameplay, yeah? I haven't played a game yet. I'm gonna make it first. Okay, here we go. Did I never define that it's an empty array? I think there's probably something about that. I think we need to say grid data I equals like that to say it's an empty array that is in there. Still didn't draw anything, and we got 700 errors. Draw is only allowed inside its draw function. Oh, okay, I can't just throw those in wherever I like. Okay, so no problem then. So what we do is we set up the grid, and then we'll queue the redraw. After we've set up the grid, and then we'll just put the draw function down here. Is this how this was going to work? Because the draw function will get called whenever we queue redraw. It will get called right at the beginning, but there'll be nothing in there. So then what we'll do is we'll say for, and we just have to do it again, right? For I, is this right? For I in grid data, and then for T in grid data I, so we need to work out all of this again to draw it. This is annoying, isn't it? What's the way of doing this then? If this has to be in this function, but I want to set up my grid over here. Well, I suppose that's fine. We just say draw circle, but then we've stored that vector in there. So we just say draw circle, but instead of having to calculate this, it's just grid Yeah, wait, this is fine. It's just grid data IT. Come on, please work. No, okay. Invalid access property key, bloody blah, on a base object. I think it needs to be dot size on the end of both of these because we're not actually cycling through the values. We're just cycling through the number of items. That's not right, is it? It looks like it's done one incorrect layer because when it we get all these bugs. Oh, we still want to get rid of that line. Okay, so now there's no errors, but it's just not behaving properly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There is 10 of them. Does the queue redraw, would it make a difference if it was inside here? I don't think it would. I think it would behave exactly the same. Yeah. The annoying thing is I don't know if it's a problem with how I'm drawing it or if it's a problem with how I'm creating the grid. So let's put that back up there, but let's go back to printing the grid data here and just look at what we've actually made. Yeah, that looks wrong. It's only 10 things. So it's actually, I think we're drawing, I think the drawing is working and it's the actual creation of the grid data that isn't working. So we can probably work that out. What if in here we print like the word looped? Because I would expect to see this printed a ton of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Only 7 times. Oh man, this is gonna be tricky to work out. It's not just going to be to do with that being the wrong way around, is it? I got one of those wrong yesterday. It looks better because it's straight. I expected them to be straight. I really did. Oh, but that time, it didn't even loop round a single time. Is for T in range the right thing? Or do we just want to say for T in the number of segments? Still straight, which seems more sensible. I think that's... Okay, we'll go through this logic again. We start with the number of segments just being 1. There'll be one giant segment, 1 point drawn. Let's see if those look sensible. There'll be a lot of numbers printed now. So the first thing it does is it prints the radius, which is 144. Therefore the circumference is going to be 900 and something. And then instead of printing looped, why don't we print the number of segments there? So we get 144 and 980, and then we say, while the circumference divided by the number of segments, which is 1, which means it's still just 980, well, 980 is greater than twice the minimum length. It means you can times the number of segments by 2 again, and then do it again, so it becomes 4, then 16, and then 32. At which point we get 2 rounds, yeah, where the radius would be 192, which is 48 more there, and we get the new circumference, and then 240 in the new circumference, and then it requires it to double it to 64, and then boom boom we get a few more before going up to 128, and then we get a load more, and that's the end, and then we just get these points. So let's print like the word count there or something. Yeah, we should be getting loads. Okay, so we are getting loads. Getting tons of the word count being printed. And then that should be 64 lots of the word count, and it seems like it is. So if we're looping here, then why are we not appending that many things? Maybe is this wrong? Print angle there instead. Underface clips, yo. Gender face clips. Good luck with your game. Thanks very much. Thank you. Do you feel like we're getting somewhere with this now? Just so I can understand, like, angles in radians. Radians are a way to measure angles, with 1 radian being the angle formed when the arc length of a circle equals the radius of that circle. A full circle is 2 pi radians. Yeah. Does this need to be in degrees. If we're doing sine and cosine things to them. I think we should try doing that. Okay, now that is clearly makes far less sense. The thing is, it's not creating enough points for some reason. When we print grid data, like all these angles are there. Why are we only... Surely... Yeah, this doesn't make any sense to me, because, like, we're doing it the right number of times. That's working. That's working. And then for t in the number of segments, boom. We could do it like this and just set the value instead. So if we said like, if we then said resize the array to t, no, not to t, to the number of segments, then we set the angle, and then instead of appending it, we will just set it like this. What's it doing? That's so weird. No, just in here, I just want to type directly into here the t, and then just say it equals all of that. Draw a circle. I guess this is getting called right at the beginning and having some issues. Because Q redraw, all Q redraw does, let's look at this. Q's the camera starting to redraw during other times, camera starting to visible. And draw is called. There's something Hugo, yes. Hugo, you've got it. Here. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? Yes. Yes, Hugo, you're right. You're right. You're right. That's it. So maybe we can go back to the appending way. But yeah, we're basically wiping it each time and just adding the most recent, well, the first one or whatever, the most recent one, the last one possibly. So if we go back to how I had it without the resize in there, but this happens there, right? For each of I, what we want to do is say like, yo, like set up all these variables and make a blank array there, and then go through and append everything to it. Come on, this is going to be it. This is going to be it. Yes. Hugo, thank you. You saved me. Hugo, yes. And now we see exactly what we want to see. Each of these points in space is going to be where the player is able to spawn these segments, right? And by looking at things like how many rows there are, like how long is that array, or what's the number of segments in it, you know, like that's how we can then say, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think like we said, Pete, like it would be as easy as changing this while loop, which works out how many segments it is, to just an actual division, to like make it into the way you suggested. So we may decide to do that later. Save. What was our? We got one little bug there, didn't we? One little warning. Anyway, we don't need to print this whole thing now, or print the angle either. Right, cool. That's a big step in the right direction. I'm going to go to the loo and then we'll crack on. Okay, this is cool. This is cool. So we now have, and we can like make this like 100 circles, and then it's going to take some time when it loads, but we will have now just created like an absolute beast of a grid. That's, yeah, obviously larger than I think any player is going to survive in this game. If we zoom into a random part of it, we can test it for accuracy at scale. Obviously it's not rendering properly now, but as we zoom in, it should start to show, and it does, like complete sort of regularity. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so yeah, obviously 100 layers is too many, but it works. And we don't want to, it's probably, yeah, we don't want to draw it necessarily anyway, but for debugging purposes it's there to be drawn. The point is that now this grid data that lives on the core has all the information we need. Yes, we could add, yeah, we wouldn't have to necessarily draw it all in one go. That will be the optimizing that I'll probably have to do later on, or tomorrow or something. Okay. So now what we need is a way for the player's position to talk to these points, because all these points are at the moment are vectors being stored in a grid. So what we want is to now adjust the player's script, because the way the player is spawning these bricks needs to change. We don't need to count how many bricks are in the bricklaying area. I don't think the player needs a bricklaying area checker anymore, because the way I want to do it is I actually want to grow I want to grow the collision shape from underneath the player, so that as soon as you stand on something, the ground underneath you starts rising, right? That's the ideal. So at all times, we've got to be like, which point on that grid is the player closest to? The player needs to be, the player's Y position needs to be above that level, and then we need to look at where they're closest to. So, yeah. So I don't think they need a bricklaying area. I think we can just purely delete that. Okay, we'll keep the hitbox. So the hitbox is up there, but the collider's down there. That's kind of weird. We just made them both the same size, I think. Just tidy this up because I get too obsessive otherwise. Okay. Now the player's script is going to have some errors in it because these don't exist anymore. Okay. And it means that this variable is also no longer needed, and if you're not on the floor you're jumping, but if you are on the floor then this is if you are on the floor. So we kind of want to say, if you're on the floor, we want to know whether you've already triggered your nearest location or not. Which is potentially tricky. Maybe we need two arrays, like the grid data should maybe store. What if we have grid pos as well? So we'll keep two arrays. We'll keep one that will actually contain data about whether that location has grown up already or not. and then we'll also like store its position. How do I want to do this? I want to like say, because we still need to do some sort of collision or like location testing, like, and the player is staying still, but it's the rotating of the core. So we want to be able to, for any given point, ask like, we want to be able to find the grid location. That's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to be constantly, the player should be able to constantly print which one of these positions they are closest to. So maybe we don't need another array necessarily. The player needs to be able to reference, we probably will, but the player needs to be able to know the polar grid reference to where the player is closest to. So for now, let's just start doing this here. So it's sort of like, we want to say, global position dot y, or minus global position dot y, because then that turns that into a positive number, because we're going to be negative numbers going upwards, divided by the circle spacing minus the core layers. So if global position dot y, or no, let's just get this variable first. So we'll call it var like current, or like r position. So your global position dot y divided by 48, or divided by core dot, we still have reference to core, don't we? Core dot circle spacing but minus core layers times circle spacing, because that has global position dot y, that minus core circle spacing times core core layers. All of that divided by the circle spacing should give us like a value for the player, and then the player's like y position, and then their t position, which is like the next thing, and then we're going to sort of want to print a vector 2 with rpos and tpos like that. And then this one is going to be harder, because we have to look at the rotation. We have to look at the rotation of the planet and how many segments there are on that vector. Yeah, this is trickier. I mean, for now, what if it was just the rotation of the core? It should show us something. Except that we can't move anymore. Or jump or anything. We've got a bug. Okay, we'll get rid of that. That can't have been what's hanging it, was it? No. Because it's still just printing loads of those. Deleted the area that spawned the boxes. Yeah, but we shouldn't need to spawn the boxes to just run around. Like, all the movement is just gone, buddy. We are printing that, so all of this code's being... Right, it knows when we're not... It knows that we are on the floor. It's playing the idle animation. Can't remember what the default one was, but I didn't set a default, so that proves it, really. Like if we put fall as the default, we switch to idle. And so it's doing all this. So why are we not getting direction? I got rid of like move and slide by mistake or something. How has this broken it? What was what was written there before? It was just the brick spawning stuff. What is going on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so no inputs are being received. Why not? So it's printing the 0 and it is just the 0. It's just not receiving any of the inputs. What silly thing have I done or connection have I ruined somewhere? Ants, hello, how are you? Big ups, welcome. Oh, you know what? I think it is. I'm such an idiot. It's here. It's because I changed the mode, didn't I? I changed the mode in the playback window to be like 2D editor mode, so it's not taking inputs. Okay, well, that was really stupid, but also a lesson to learn, and yeah, I won't make that mistake again. Okay, and now we can see we're getting rotation values here. Yeah, okay. I hate those kinds of lessons, yeah. How long did we spend on that? Like 10 minutes. At least. Okay, anyway, we got there. We got there. It's because I started thinking, I was like, let me check if the player's actually processing. And I was like, okay, but why would the inputs be switched off? And I was like, oh. So I probably want to like floor this whole thing so that we just get an integer for the sort of nearest row, yeah, that we're on, or the nearest radius line. Floor is still giving me so maybe floor isn't what I want. Floor I rounds x downwards towards negative infinity, return the largest whole number. A type safe version of floor returning an int. That's what I want. I want floory. So floor I floor I and I is still giving 0.0. Bruh. Which rounds towards 0. Oh. Okay, so do we just want int? I'm seriously. I mean, it always says 0.0, but I just want 0. What are you doing? If I put int in there, come on. If I put it there, oh, because it's a vector 2 and not a vector 2i. That's what we need. And then I can probably just do that, knowing that it's going to just give me the nearest integer anyway. Yeah, okay. So I think that's working now. And then, because we want this to be a vector 2i, right? We don't want it to be some, and then we'll call this like the polar pos, which is going to be that. We'll just print it there for now. So now we need to get this rotation thing working, and this is going to be trickier because this is not about rotation. This is about how many segments are we dividing that layer into. Yeah. How many layers are we dividing it into? And which one are we therefore closest to when you look at the core rotation, modulo, you know, whatever, and all that stuff, and get it down to just a looping integer for whichever one we're closest to. And in our case, this first one here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, that's a 32, isn't it? We started with 32 segments. We have 32 twice, then we get 64 4 times, and then we get 128 4 times for our 10 at the moment. So we'd want to be able to, for this to say 0, and then when we get to here, it needs to switch to 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that, right? As we go around the dots that we're closest to. That's the first thing, to convert the player's position into where they are. And of course, we can't test that the first one is working because we don't have platforms to jump onto. But if we were to do this here instead, then it's going to post it when we jump as well. And you can see there we get above number 1, but we don't get above number 2. Okay, good. So if we can work out this T position here as well, then we're laughing. And so this becomes a question of how many segments are there on the row, on our position row. So if we say hold on 2 seconds. Okay, howdy hi. I am back. Jack Colley's here. Yo, yo, yo. And then Pete is saying, are the segments stored anywhere like in the Rare dictionary when they're created? They don't have a record of how many are in each loop. Yes, exactly. We do have that. So that's in core here. Like if I look at the grid data for any value of R, oh, I've called it I in this script. I might change it to R in this script as well, so we're just dealing with R and T the whole time. So there's an I there that needs to be R, 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 and that needs to be R, and that needs to be R. And then everything should be still working and consistent. Good. Okay, so like what we're saying is, we sort of need to say, we need to do a query on that particular value, whatever rpos, whatever we've determined rpos to be. We want to say, well, how many items are in the array at grid data rpos? Yeah. So the number of segs is core grid data r dot size, and that will give us the size of the array that's stored at r. Oh, sorry, at rpos. There. That gives us the total number, and then we need to then take this rotation and sort of divide that up to see how many of those we've moved through. I think wait 2 seconds. Okay. Here we are. Okay, right. Let's crack on then. I think we're making progress at a sufficient rate that I feel like we're on track to do. Oh yeah, I can just close this now because I have it in my player script, don't I? We're on track to do all of this stuff. The polar grid is pretty much done now. It's about getting the bricks and the collisions with that grid going. So I think we're on track to get all this done today. So let's keep going. The polar grid part here for the player knowing where they are. So for any given, oh, and also we do still only need to do this while we are in the air. Sorry, while we're not in the air, while we're on the ground. So what we're saying is that whatever that rotation is going to be a value in radians over tau. Yeah, so like that, the rotation over tau is the percentage that we are through it. And then we just need to kind of clamp that. We need to multiply the number of segments by that. Getting it in minus numbers, that's interesting. So do we do minus the rotation or something over tau instead? Yeah. And then it should go, oh, and then we want to take all of this modulo num segs, so that when we get to 32 it goes back to 0. And it doesn't like that. What do we have to do? Is it mod? You have to actually write mod, don't you? I haven't done a modulo in a while. Modulo. Nothing there. Is it like, isn't there F mod or something? Returns the floating point remainder. But I just want normal mod. Which is probably M in this same doc somewhere. Is there like iMod or something then? No. Why? Oh, is this the global scope of float or something? No, this is just global scope. So I can't remember how to do just a normal. Mood. Oh, posmod. Returns the integer modulus of x divided by y that wraps equally in positive and negative. I don't think we're ever going to be in negative anyway, so I think I can just use posmod. that numsegs. This should mean now it just like when we get round to 32 or 31, it'll go back to 0. Yeah. So now that should be a pretty good estimation of the closest segment that we're at. Okay, so now we know where the player is on the polar grid, which is good. Rob's here. Oi to the oi. How are you? Big up yourself. Ah. Oh, that looks cool, Rob. The art you've just sent. Show everybody here, look. Boom. Look at that. That's going to be our little running creation, god of creation or whatever. Big done indeed upped. Excellent. Okay, so this is going good. So now we know the polar position the player is in whenever they are in the air. So whenever they're on the ground. And so then we basically just want to be checking, does the has the brick at that, like, have we visited that location before? Essentially that's it. That it's like it's a one-time impact that we have on that location. So I think we do want to split this into two arrays. We have grid data and then we have grid position or state. Maybe we should call it state, because then we can leave grid data as it is, and grid state will contain a false and then we'll give it a true. So every time when we set up grid data, we also want to set up grid state in the exact same way. So we make it have all of those, which they'll be filled with nulls. But then we're going to fill them all with these empty arrays. And we're going to append. So then at this point, when we're setting up the grid, we're also just going to append onto grid state null. No, or false. Let's call it false. So then that should print grid state. That should give us just a huge array of falses. Because we didn't do this to grid state either. So there's nothing there to do it to, but now, yeah, just a huge array of falses. There's a false for every dot on our enormous grid there. Yeah. And then whenever the player gets close enough to one of these, or maybe just, yeah, maybe it's just every time. Okay, so now we take this polar position and we want to create a brick there, set it to true. Well, check if it's true already or not. If it's okay, so if core dot grid state rpos tpos. No, that's not the syntax. I want that. If that location is false, then it means we need to make it active. So the first thing to do is to set it to true, and then we have to spawn the brick there. Okay, the bricks are never being activated, and they don't look perfectly evenly distributed, unfortunately. Yeah, weird how you get those little imperfections. I wonder why. Is that when I stop moving? If I just run in a straight line. No, so it may be something to do with firstly, we definitely don't need to print all those falses anymore. It may be something to do with the fact that we are using move and slide and we're running along a thing, and also at the moment we're not positioning them, we're positioning them just with the player, right? Whereas what we should be doing is feeding the grid data of that in. So that's the exact location that it should go in. Except that shouldn't be its global position. That should just be its position, right? Am I right about that? Is it going to start doing horrible things? Oh yeah. Core grid data. Okay, yeah. So, okay, this is cool though, because that's kind of right. It's kind of right. Because obviously from the grid's point of view, that is 0. Yeah, like 0 rotation is there. I thought we were going to have this problem, and I was surprised it hadn't come up yet. But look how they're being created perfectly on their dots, and I think now, yeah, look at that. That is perfectly regular and uniform. So it's almost like the T-pos needs to be looped around. Like somehow what we need to do is tell this here when we start looking at what rotation we're at, that it's minus core rotation, like minus like half a pi, right? No, it's not in there, because what that is calculating is the size of each segment. No, it's not. Yeah, I think so. I think if we subtract half of pi from this, so if we say minus core rotation minus pi divided by 2. Divided by tau, like that. Come on, be in the right place. Yeah, okay. Not too bad. The rotation still isn't being handled correctly. of the actual placement here, like this. The fact that global rotation is being set to 0 is wrong. It needs to be set to something much more specific based on exactly where it is. What we want to do is we want to set the rotation based on its position, and that position relative to 0, 0. So we want to take the vector, we want to take that pos as a vector and turn it into an angle. So I think, again, it's got to be its relative rotation. Maybe its relative rotation being at 0 will work. No. That's cool, though. Okay, so it's going to be... We're making progress here, though. This is exciting because it's kind of working, and we're going to tidy it up quickly now. I think we've done most of the hard maths, and now it's just going to be kind of rebuilding how we built it yesterday with this system in mind. Is declared but never used? Yeah, I guess we don't need to actually define it like that because we've got the variables there. So we'll just get rid of that line of code. And we're going to take the position, which is a vector, which is already a vector relative to 0 of the core. And do we just say angle? I'm going to think... Okay. We need to rotate it 90 degrees to the right. So we plus... pi over 2, which is 90 degrees in radians. Fuck yeah, look at that. And they are perfectly mathematically uniformly placed now. Perfect. Look at that. It's a lovely thing. And all we need to do now is change what size they are when they're placed based on the grid size. So we can put in some function to the brick there to choose its width, and we probably need to then just feed in the circumference divided by the number of segments to get that width. And we need to activate them because at the moment they aren't getting, we're never calling activate on the bricks, and we need to basically change that as well. But let's start by getting them resized. So we'll have a function here called set width, and we'll feed in the width, and then the brick. I mean, the crudest way of doing this will be to scale the whole object, unlink these, and just scale the X, like, hey, yeah. So that's probably the quickest and easiest way of doing it. So we'll unlink the scale there. And then at the moment, the scale is like, what, that it's 20, is it? Yeah, on its base, it's 24 wide. And that looks like, I think it is 20 wide because its X coordinates are 10. Yeah, I think it's 12 up there. Yes, because this collide, wait. Yeah, this is all going to be like relative to its center probably of something, isn't it? I bet, yeah. Okay, so I think it's 10. So I think the base of it is 20 units at the moment. So we need to just scale it with 20 in mind. So scale dot x equals so let's say we wanted it to be 22 and it's 20, then we need to take this, we need to times it by the width over 20. Yeah, so it's equals width over 20. I think that's just it. That will now scale it to be it. Arguably it doesn't need a function call. We could just set the scale here. We could just be like brick.scale equals you know, some width over 20, and then we can feed the width like seg width in there, and then this guy doesn't need a function in there for that, and then we can feed the width in here, which for now we'll just, let's put 25 in there and just see. Oh, do we need to divide by 20.0 and probably give that as a float as well? Oh yeah, scale.x. Yeah, I mean that's made them wider, right? And then we could say, no, it's not 25. Like it should be 30 wide. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now we want to calculate that based on a circumference size or something. So it's going to be like redoing a lot of this maths here. So would it be better to snap the shape's corners to the grid corners? Potentially, yeah. Although the way I've done it at the moment is the dots are like the center point of the wedge. But yeah, you could. Snapping them to the actual things would work as well, definitely. Because, you know, just scaling the width is going to be slightly crude because we're not going to get the exact wedge shape we need. Whereas if we actually define the points of the polygons, that said, that's definitely a level of polish. Because I think for our purposes, we can make this work. Like, for example, like one thing I could do is just actually give it a little bit more of that. Oops. And then that 30 we're feeding it now, I'd say that's probably perfect. Yeah. It looks pretty good, right? So I wonder if we get because these will vary a little bit, right? But it shouldn't vary that much. And if these work, these might just work. We might not need to actually scale it. It might just be setting them all to be permanently 30. We might just find is good because we're positioning them so precisely, and they are quite small little chunks anyway. But let's try and get them activating now, because here's another thing. Is when do they get activated? Like, these bricks, yeah. What if they start with their Y scale at 0, and then if that goes to like 0.1, yeah, this is cool. So then we just want to lerp or maybe we just have an animation player. Let's give them an animation player here. And the animation player is just going to say be called grow. Grow. And grow will last like 5 seconds. Or like 3 seconds. Or maybe 3. And it's going to be a property track, and the property is going to be the bricks. Y scale, which in fact I just want to insert a key there, and then let's just do it like this, insert the key there and make the Y scale 1. Now, these shouldn't be linked. I just want the X scale. Okay, wait, hold on a second. Linear, continuous or something? Oh, wait, why doesn't it like that? Because they're not linked or something. This should, yeah, something it's not happy with. Should be continuous. Delete that keyframe. Like, why, when I've made this be scale Y? Okay, maybe we'll just start slightly again. Let's just add the actual scale here and just disconnect them. So we'll say brick scale. They're not linked there, so we'll keyframe that. And then here we'll make that 1.0, and then we'll keyframe that. Yeah, okay, cool. And then that will autoplay, and then the collider can be enabled by default, and I don't think this needs a script anymore. I think we just, I suppose we can leave the script blank for now. I don't need to, right? So if you stand still, the planet just grows, and then there's kind of a whole new load of testing that needs to happen for these. Oh, and because we made the X scale back to 0, it's not too bad though, right? Like, obviously it's all broken because there's gaps. But if we were properly handling the X coordinate, I think it would be fine. Because that's the problem, we've set scale here to be 1 in the animation player, whereas really, yeah, we don't want to be touching. So why, I would have thought if we'd put a track in here to animate on the bricks Y scale, that the keyframes we insert here would just see. Oh yeah, let's see, it just adds that. I want a keyframe here that is just an integer. But let's just try, I guess, 1.0 there. And that one should be 0.0 there. Okay, the animation doesn't work. Is it because they both need to be unlinked to be like acceptable? Why does the scale Y still want a vector value? Why doesn't it just look for an integer? Or sorry, just like a float. Like it should just look for one float. Like it's like not letting me independently animate the Y value. So the other option is to just do this in a script where we say func. Let's do it in the physics process as well, because it is going to be about physics, although I don't think I'll necessarily need to use delta for it. But let's just say like scale.y equals lerp. Oh, do we need to do lerp f from float to float? Yeah, that's right. From 0.0. No, not from, no, we want it from scale.y to 1, and the weight can be 0.1 or something, right? Okay, I mean that grows very quickly. And we can actually grow them from, so that's too fast, way too fast. So 0.1 or something, like 10% slower. I mean, this is creating its own world of other bugs, having them actually physically grow up like that. We missed one there. We got it then. Lerping isn't very good because it slows right down right towards the end there. You can see how we will need to adjust. Yeah, and the player's like constantly falling off of their own thing. So again, it's kind of like, lerp isn't the one for this. And I think we do want to go back to having an activate function that's called when the player is further away. So they only start growing when you leave that patch of ground. So that's a thing to think about. And I don't want to do it as a lerp. I do want to scale it with that animation, because unless there's a way of making a lerp like be like linear or something, linearly interpolates between two values. Slurp. Nice. Yeah, I think they want to activate when the player's already left the area, which is what we kind of had before, which means that we still don't need to worry probably about, because if the scale by default is at 0, then we don't need to be bringing the okay, well, fuck it. Let's put the lerp back in for a second because it's fine to test with. Okay, so wait, hold on. So when we activate, then we want to be saying like, this is not efficient because we're going to be doing this check like every frame forever on every brick. But it's fine for now just to see if it works. And then we just need to find a way of sending the bricks that signal from the player when we kind of get far away enough. So maybe the player keeps a list of bricks that have been created, or the last brick that it created. So whenever we do this, we have to take the last one that we were storing and activate it, and then save this one to the new slot. So last brick, start off being null, and then the first thing we do, we say if last brick activate, and then at the bottom here we'll say last brick equals brick. Wow, super glitchy. Like it doesn't even want me to run. And then I can get stuck between them as well. Okay, it doesn't like doing it like that. Like just running immediately is not a thing. So take absolutely ages to get to the top of where they're supposed to be. And yeah, and we can get caught on them and stuff. Because I think because it's there, it's got a collision shape, but it's got a collision shape that's of thickness 0. So maybe we will go back to having the collider disabled by default, and then we'll only so now maybe that will help. We can at least immediately run. They definitely need to get to their desired height faster. But this does look a lot smoother. I think lerping is still wrong because it's not like we just want it to go up like linearly and then just get to the top and be there, right? But this is, we're getting there, we're getting there. Yeah, that's looking cool, isn't it? Here we go, look. Little preview there. Whoop. Of our character. No, I've got this at 1280 by 7. We're just at 720p at the moment. With the character being 64 pixels tall, I think, isn't he? Aqua Boy, this template. Yeah, I think he's 64 pixels tall. And yeah, our screen resolution's 1280 by 720 at the moment. And that's kind of cool because at this distance away from each other, the dots at this distance away from each other, that works. It comes up behind us just as we leave. When we look at when the dots are slightly closer together here, yeah, it's not. We need to get further away than that before. So what if we have 2 brick buffers? So we say last brick and the second, or last brick 2. So if we have 1 and 2, so if we have a last brick 1, then last brick 2 now becomes last brick 1, so that last brick 1 can become that. And then before we check if we have last brick 1, what we want to do is check if we have a last brick 2. And if we have a last brick 2, we activate it. I don't know if this is going to work, or if I've like just bodged something together that doesn't work, but like, yeah, cool. So now we can run smoothly around, and they never come until we've like sort of really past the area that they were in. We still run into them while they're spawning and glitch about a bit like that, and you can jump out of those, but just while it's lerping. What if we let these completely finish? We just get stuck if we just run into it. I wonder why that is. But I'm getting a bit happy with that. Design the cool background. Okay, nice, nice. This game will look very trippy. And yeah, I think the background does need to rotate. We need to have stars in the sky that rotate, so that because we want to get the feeling that even though in reality the way it's programmed, the player is still and the world is rotating, we want it to feel like the player is moving around the world, right? So everything in the background needs to rotate with it, I think, definitely. Okay, so a few problems we have here. We want them to be a more precise, the bricks need to be a more precise size. Yeah, okay, so what if this is now just back to 0.1? Because now that we've built in the... Yeah, it's much better, right? Just the speed of them has helped it massively. And if they were being scaled to be the right width, that middle layer would look a lot better. It's funny when you jump around a lot having the delay of 2. And also when you land on one that's not fully formed yet. Again, the lerp might not be the best. It does look cool fast, right? So the game could simply be fully form the planet without dying. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's like the game is how big a planet can you make before you die, before you get hit by something. We are getting some overlaps though. Oh wow, yeah, look at that. Some weird things happening. And now I'm fully like stuck. Oh no. I thought all the bugs would go away if I did this. This is like spent ages making it mathematically correct, but it's still just as buggy. Still just as... I think the lerp is a problem. Probably. I don't think they're spawning in the wrong places. I think somehow, like, it's just not precise enough the way that we're testing where the player is. So you can kind of get some cheeky edges going probably by like falling off an edge or something. They definitely need to be dynamically resized to match the grid. Which is a lot more maths, I think. Yeah, we could certainly just detect whenever the player traps himself and call that a game over, yeah. That would work. I'll charge my phone, I think. Yeah, 20%. Okay, cool. I don't know if like buffering the bricks is the best way either. We just want something about distance. The brick still has this area where it's on layer 3. So if the player had a big area... Yeah, okay. Okay, I think I know... Okay, the one question is, it's like this area, yeah? I wonder, can the player still detect collisions with this area that's got 0 scale? Well, the background needs to be as big as the player can make the planet. So it might be worth the background being very large, right? Because as the player grows the planet, then the space that the player's inhabiting will spiral outwards. Yeah, a loopable background. Yeah, makes sense. So let's do a test here then. If the player has a brick detection layer again, so we need an area on the player here, and we'll call it brick detector, and give that a collision shape, and the collision shape can be a big old circle. Something quite big, like that, centered around our guy, like something like that. And we just basically say whenever the brick leaves this area, at that point, it can activate. So then instead of counting, what we do is this area will signal when it's exited. Because every brick we create will be inside it. So then we get rid of checking for last bricks. And we simply say activate. So now they just activate whenever they leave the proximity of the player. So if we jump, it should do it. No. Okay. So I think they're never... I mean, let's print. Test here, like that. We're never getting tests. So I think because they're like literally 0, we're just not detecting it. So what if it wasn't 0? What if it was some nearly 0 value? It's a tiny little thing. Okay, well they're there. Oh, I know the problem. The player's brick detector area is looking for layer 1, and it should just be looking at layer 3. And the bricks should just be like their little area should be on layer 3. You really want some kind of line shooting up in the sky to define the loop point. Yeah, we can get to that. We could add a gradient circle modifier around the planet or something to make it look like the atmosphere is expanding around the planet. Yeah, nice. Definitely. There's lots of cool like graphic stuff I think we can do. But now I'm wondering, because I got that layer wrong before, whether this could stay at 0 and still trigger. Yeah, that's what I was imagining. Okay, yeah, this is working perfectly now. We did still get an overlap there. Interesting. But I guess that's because we're not scaling the things perfectly. But now this is perfect. So as soon as we leave an area, we get the thing. And even when you jump, it grows up underneath you like that. So we can do like Minecraft pillaring. Except we can't go any further because it will break because our grid isn't big enough. Wow. Wait, what? Why is it still showing errors now? Line 50. Use space character for indentation instead of tab as used before in the file. Where? What did I do? Just undo and it works again. So yeah, we need to get the width of them correct now. And then we have a game, really. I've kind of done all the sketchy maths. Yeah, that's interesting, the way we can still get those overlaps there. Again, I think it's probably just to do with scaling. Okay. Now, in every case where it's like the wrong shape, like here, actually that just looks like an issue of scale. Like the actual size of the segment looks good, and those are all obviously fine. So is that layer, and that layer, it's like now the bottom is they need to be more square than they currently are. It will crash if I try and land on top of those. Okay, cool. We're getting there, aren't we? We're getting there. So at the moment, we just throw this number 30 in. And what we need to do instead is look at the circumference. We basically need to look at the segment width. Okay, let me go to the loo. Right, so just scaling the width is quite crude, and we might decide it's not detailed enough like this evening, but for now, if we just say is that, isn't it? All of that is our no, it's that circle spacing times no. Our global position, our minus global position y, well, it's rpos times the circle spacing will give us the radius of the current layer we are on. Yeah? So what we want to do is get like seg width here, yeah? And the segment width is going to be the circumference divided by the number of segs, and the circumference is 2 times pi times rpos times circle spacing, and then we just take seg width and pop it in there. And we're probably going to want to like add something to it because it's not going to be quite right, but let's see. Nothing works. We broke everything. Bollocks. They're just always 0. I thought that's what was happening. Why? This should be the circumference, right? 2 pi r. And r, that's like the int. Oh, because we're on layer 0. We're multiplying by 0. So rpos isn't the right thing. Oh, it's what rpos plus. Yeah. I know what it is. It's rpos plus the core layers. Gets us the real, like, true R position in terms of how many times we multiply it by that. Okay, so like almost perfect. And again, almost perfect, or pretty much looking perfect there. We do still get some overlaps when you run off an edge. It's like we're triggering it but as we go off the edge. Which maybe isn't terrible anyway. There may be an argument, therefore, Pete, for your method anyway. Is it worth storing circle spacing and times by core layers? Yeah, I'm doing that a few times, right? Actually, to be fair, I'm doing a slightly different calculation here, right? It's slightly different because we want the core layers added to that. Although I suppose, yeah, I could refactor it so we were actually using the variables more intelligently, probably. Anyway, given that we can create these overlaps anyway, maybe, Pete, your suggestion's slightly better. Although there's still going to be variance between the size of the segments. You know, and it's probably a case of what we really want to do is like seg width plus 2 or something, just to give a bit of space so they always kind of overlap nicely. Starting to look pretty good, right? If these polygons were textured and the textures were changing with each layer. It feels really good now and it looks really good. And it's quite hard to get stuck. Oh no, it's still quite easy to get stuck. But you can kind of always jump out. But why we get snagged like that? I do not know. Maybe can we make sometimes you can make like these objects like a little bit slidey. Stop on slope. So what if we No, you still get stuck like that just by running into a wall. I think I know why. I think it's probably because we're doing this. Like, if we comment that out, I bet we don't get stuck on walls anymore. Let's put that stop on slope back on to do it, give it a fair test. Yeah, so that we don't get stuck on the walls, but what we do is lose the x-axis, kind of, we lose that like the proper positioning, but we don't get stuck anymore. It's because when we get pushed slightly off the center, we're pushing the player back towards the center. But if pushing them back towards the center means pushing them into a wall, it's causing some grief. But we do need to be able to recorrect the player's position there. The spawn of the blocks relative to the center of the player of the grid. They're being positioned on the grid. But like I said, the player's position is being pushed around. It's what we were talking about last night, Pete, about whether we go back to actually having the player and the gravity moving around, so that we can use move and slide for wall collisions. Or what we're doing now is we're not using move and slide for wall collisions. We're checking is on wall, and then if they are on the wall, we're like, if they're not on the wall, we're moving them. But we're kind of basically doing our own wall detection. And so the player the player does get pushed slightly away from 0x when they walk into a wall. And then we're pushing them back towards 0x, which is pushing them into a wall, which they can't move into, but they can't move away from. We're like preventing the player from being able to yeah. What if we put that inside here, so we only try to correct them when they're not trying to move themselves? Maybe that won't work, because then we just walk into it and we'll just get the same error we got. Yeah, because we want to be doing that regardless of what the player's doing. Tough one. If the player's locked in X all the time, that gave us other glitchy things. Do you remember what I can't remember what the problem was. Like, we had it before where we did it. Let's try it. Where we just did this, right? So after move and slide, we constantly just force the player back into the middle. But that's how you end up getting like that, like properly jammed inside things. You can just about get out of, but it's also not ideal. I'm sure there's an elegant solution to this. This is less elegant than this, I think. But maybe it's a combination of the two that we need. Nudge them after the move and slide. So in order to nudge them, like with velocity, like we're doing here, we need to set that velocity, because what move and slide does is it like applies the velocity. Whatever's stored in the velocity value when you call move and slide, it's like, okay, well, the velocity is this, and now I'm going to attempt to move in that direction. Can you call move and slide a second time? That's an interesting idea. So if we did this, it's kind of just the same as when we called it once. You just get that thing where you get stuck because our X position is slightly not 0. Big in the game with the sub gift. Yes, Rob. Shout outs to you. To Dr. Carfree. Lovely. Nice one. Thanks. Has our jump height gotten higher somehow? Also, what are we printing? I think it has. I think we're getting double jump power from calling move and slide twice, right? The jump is happening twice. Yeah. So I think calling it twice was just applying double forces for everything, apart from this, which was being applied once. It was all that like doing it twice was doing. So, what about if we integrate it with not being on the wall here? The nudge happens before the next process. Would that make a difference? Also, I don't know how we could call deferred. It's not. We can do set deferred, I suppose. We could set the velocity after the move and slide. But then it's just queued for next time, and it's just the same issue but a frame later. I think it's going to be in here. Because at the moment, we're rotating the world, and the world is pushing the player off of their x-axis. And it's almost like what we want is for the player to be an immovable object so that the rotation stops. But that's what I mean. We're not using like move and slide or something like that with the physics engine taken into account for the rotation. We're just rawly moving the rotation. And what we really want to be doing is using something like move and slide to deal with our wall collisions. It's kind of like what I said last night about, like, is it that the bricks should be the character bodies and the player should be the static body? But then that I think creates even more chaos. But I'm just wondering if we do something where we say, like, look, if you're not on the wall, rotate the thing, but only if you're not on the wall and your x coordinate is 0. So what if it was like, if not on wall and global position x is 0. So then we only rotate when the player is nicely positioned. And if they're not nicely positioned, then it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And that way we don't ever push them. Come on, please work. No, it's the exact same problem. And now we can never move again. Right? Because now we're not on X. Oh, that didn't work either. Also, because we're saying, is it equal? This is like, is it not exactly 0? So we're kind of always pushing the player slightly back towards 0. But this is saying, is it exactly 0? So that's not really working either. But I think it's going to be something like that. It's going to be making the the criteria for rotating the core stricter. Maybe the player needs to have some buffer for detecting walls. So rather than saying if not is on wall, we want to be saying if your buffer can't detect a wall. So that there's like a little bit of extra room before the rotation stops, so that the rotation stops before it strikes the player's actual physics body collision box and therefore moves the player. And I think if we get this right, we wouldn't even need to have that in. I mean, it's a nice bit of safety to have in. But what about that? So let's think about that. So the walls are also on. They have these areas. They're on layer 3. So we could use that again. In the brick detector here. The brick areas were also on layer 4, and then the player has another area for layer 4 called wall detector, and the wall detector is a capsule as well. And it's going to be I want it to be in the middle of the right left hitboxes thing there. Okay, whatever. I don't really. What's that one there then? Is that the middle of the sprite or something? That's the middle of the main collider. Okay. Yeah, cool. So we want it there. We want it centered around that and wider, but maybe not as tall like that. And maybe make it like this and put it on layer for masking to layer 4, and then this guy needs to be not colliding with anything, and as long as that guy's got no collisions, so if it's not on wall, and we'll keep his not on wall in there for insurance, right? And wall detector dot get overlapping areas dot size is 0. Oh, still doesn't work. We still end up getting too close for comfort. But I guess that's because it doesn't stop us from moving. So maybe the wall detector thing should be more about... No, but that is our moving. Just way bigger. Now we can never move because it's too big. It's like immediately colliding with the floor. Oh yeah, because once we get locked into it, I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there. So, do we need one on each side? Because we're looking at direction on each side. Yeah, okay, so let's do one on the left and one on the right, and then let's make them into capsules again, I suppose, but move them like that. One can be there. And that one can be there, something like that. So now I've got one on each side. And we've got this tiny little actual collider in the middle, which means that when there's walls, when we've got walls on both sides of us, he's going to be like, okay, don't move, but you can still jump upwards out of the gap, which feels right. And then if our direction is less than 0, we're going left. So we want to make sure that there's no walls on the left, and on this one we want to make sure there's no walls on the right, and we want to make sure they don't overlap with one another, actually. So we just make it slightly small like that. Yes, come on. Okay, sick. We've done it. And we can fall in a gap and jump back up again. Even leave a little cavern. Oh, that was weird though. I did have a little... it doesn't like falling down a gap. Which may just be that these are too low. Like, and they don't really need to be. They could just be like that, probably. Yeah. Okay, we got it. I think we've got it now. That's proper smooth movement. Smooth everything, really. I'm not able to... Oh, yeah, I am. Okay, good. Yeah, weird that I can't trigger that one. Why would that not trigger underneath me? Oh, that's like a bit glitchy. Probably all right for a jam for now. Now the question is performance, isn't it? We've only got 10 layers here. It's going to be quite a short game. Grab a little collectible there, fall into a hole. You can gradually build your way out of a hole. But yeah, you're going to be basically relying on the dude not coming and shooting you at that point. Something's preventing me from getting close enough to that point to trigger it from... Yeah, interesting. Okay. But this is definitely working a lot better. What if these were like slightly smaller? That give us a bit more wiggle room in tighter areas. Yeah, it's cool, man, isn't it? It's like, it's working. Still can't, when you get into a tiny little gap like that, it's very difficult to make it trigger. So let's think about that. We spawn a brick when our nearest location is marked as false. So is it just this area is too large? And we need to kind of like be activating them just slightly quicker. Okay, that was weird. Okay, well, that seems to maybe not entirely fixed. I would really like it if that one underneath came up with you when you fell into a one wide gap like that. It's probably fine though, because at least now we can get out of them. You know? And like we're not getting stuck to the wall. There we go. It worked then as well. It came up that time. Yeah. Okay, I mean, I think it's probably fine, you know. It's probably all right. It's looking kind of fun. We need to now force the player to jump, right? Because otherwise, like, obviously the player just plays the perfect game and they just go. And there's like not really much challenge involved. Time to break it. Yeah, pretty much. It's time to add the enemy in, right? And let's also do like a performance test. I checked 100 and it was slow. But what if the core wasn't 10? What if the core was 30? And have a nice load at the beginning. Okay, it wasn't too... Okay, yeah, but that is bad. That's bad performance already at 30. So yeah, this is where... I might have to go back to the drawing board. Although 30 may be just too much anyway. What if like the thing is it's got to not just run on my computer now. It's got to run on the internet, like in a browser, on like people's crappy laptops. 20 seems okay though. I mean, how long is it going to take me to get up to 20? There's also, like you suggested originally, Pete, like maybe the bricks become a mask layer. So once they've spawned in and they've become collidable with, that we convert these all into down into one big object instead of tons of little ones. But I guess it gets exponentially large when we go up like loads more layers. Also, in theory, I can just make the segment length bigger to manage performance. That's one of the advantages with how I built this thing. So with larger segments, we can make a much, much bigger... Oh, look at that! That's pretty cool. So 50 is too big, right? But what if it was like 30 and then we went up to 30 layers? Like, are we going to see much better performance? Yeah, it's still pretty hard. But like if these were 50 and I was at 30, yeah, we're back to kind of pace, like good speed. So you know what we could do? We could give people a like resolution option. .200 by 200 space tile. For the background. Oh, sick. Yeah, send it over, man. I'll chuck it in now to start getting a vibe. But yeah, like, I actually think 20 layers and probably at like 30 is probably going to be pretty nice. You can see it's really not a circle now that we've made those thingies bigger. I guess it also does help with some of these issues we're having with falling into holes, because now all the holes are larger. Yeah, but he's kind of tripping over the slope. Maybe that's something to do with the player's like slope settings. Stop on slope. Maybe turn stop on slope off here. And we can put some smoothing on the camera because the camera feels a bit jiggly jaggly. But yeah, that stop on slope seemed to be nice. Nope, still doesn't like this particular layer. I mean, a lot of them move super smooth, but they do vary depending on precisely how big a layer it was. Pretty cool, huh? Looks like I need coyote jumps too. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool. Rob, could you send it to me over Discord? Because WhatsApp has like fucking crushed it. But Discord, I think, just sends the full PNG file or whatever without compressing it. That would be awesome. But that looks cool. Yeah, we'll chuck that in. It will start to bring it to life, definitely. What was I just... And so if the segment length is 25, do we just sidestep that problem? Oh yeah, no, I remember what I wanted to do. I wanted to put position smoothing enabled on the camera as well, just so we get a bit of nicer jumping kind of motion. Yeah, that's way nicer. And then we'll see, was it the third or fourth layer was the problematic one a minute ago? Seems to have smoothened out. It's starting to look and feel, with the camera smoothing now, just on, that's changed everything, because now the player jumps and the camera doesn't sort of twitch with them like that. It's really starting to feel and look really, really cool. And we just need sparkles wherever the player lands, like, so it's like leaving behind this like trail of magic, you know, creation, fertility, whatever it is. There, look, that's weird. Sometimes we get real close to them and jump into a hole and it doesn't come out. Look, and you have to run across it again to like make it go, oh yeah, I am there. Probably because we're slightly too high for our position to be considered to be low down. Also, what are we're printing something like every frame and we needn't the segment width. So I think it's going to be to do with this being a little bit sensitive to the square tops. We're slightly too high up. So we kind of want to like just minus. No, we don't really want to minus something from it. It needs slightly more tolerance in there somehow anyway. You love how the dots look. I was just about to get rid of the dots. When we put your background in now, the dots are going to go actually. Let's see. So if I... Can't I just save image? GMTK. We'll call it. Let's create a folder called Universe, and we'll call that Sky. Now in here we should have that. There we go. Cool. And then in game, in here, we add a texture rect, I think, and that goes on the texture rect stretch mode tile. So now if I just do this, it just tiles it, and then we can just sort of make a huge thing and then put it at the back there and call it BG. And then the cores dots are still being drawn on top of it. Ah, of course. Of course, of course. It does not want to be in the game. It needs to be in the core scene, because the core scene is where we're rotating. So we want the texture rect a child of the core. Tile. So if we make it like 5,000 by 5,000 and make its position minus 2,500 minus 2,500 like that. Now hold on, the player only ever goes upwards from this point, so it doesn't need to be centered around 0, 0 like that. Whatever. Probably doesn't matter at all. So you know what would be cool? They generally look great. It'd be a shame to lose them. Really? I don't know. I want it to look more like those were definitely just there for debugging purposes. I feel like because they're not sized to the grid, so there's loads of overlap, preventing creation of new blocks when you fall in holes. Yeah. I'll tell you what it is. It's because they've got flat tops. So because they've got a flat top and not a curved top, when the player is like where 2 points meet, they're slightly above that radius, right? So it's like it's struggling to tell the depth, like what layer we're actually walking on until we move. So when we fall into like a one wide hole, like this, okay, we'll work that time. There, see, we weren't low enough for the game to have gone, oh, you've actually come down to the layer below, and that's where you're standing. It thinks we're still standing up here because we're on that ridge, because we don't have a curved edge, we have like a jagged edge. Now there's something, isn't there, about this background needing parallax. But how parallax works when it's a circular thing, fuck knows. Maybe parallax doesn't work, but it feels incredibly flat, that background, doesn't it? I think I can imagine how parallax would work. You need layers. I don't know. I'm not sure I do understand how it would work. It's just how does parallax work when you're moving around a rotated space, right? Would it look better if the background didn't rotate? Well, if the background doesn't rotate, let's just copy this then, and make it invisible in there and add it to the game layer. Here it is without it rotating. Oh, but we can see all the dots. I'm sorry. I'm going to get rid of the dots. We just don't need them for debugging purposes anymore. So I think if I just comment that out, we just lose them. No, we still get them. Okay, so we just comment out that and just put pass in there. So if the background doesn't rotate, you really get the feeling that the planet is. What I'm thinking is, like, you want layers. Hmm. Yeah, see, I don't think the parallax won't translate to rotation. I mean, we could do some experiments, just some actual physical experiments, like if I hold two things and then we rotate the camera, how that looks. But I think the speed of rotation needs to be constant. Fuck knows, man. Let me just Google parallax rotation and see if anyone's written anything about it. Parallax backgrounds from a rotating fixed perspective on GameMaker Community.io. This looks good. Sorry for the title, I couldn't explain it in a sentence. Basically, I really enjoyed the look of parallax backgrounds with 2D side-scrolling games for proving a sense of movement and use them a lot. In my new project, I want to make a gallery shooter like Wild Guns or Operation Wolf, but with the player controlling a turret that rotates in place. So I guess it's effectively an FPS. Closest thing to think of is Pteropods for the Amiga. I suspect nobody's played it. No, I haven't. There'll be a little radar mini-map showing enemies in relation to the player in the middle. So my question is, in this scenario, would parallax backgrounds work to provide a sense of rotation, or would that be confusing, and should background just be a single static image? In my head, the distant background should move much faster than the foreground, opposite of normal parallax, but not sure. Any thoughts appreciated? On further inspection, it doesn't rotate. I can't think of the example I'm trying to achieve, which isn't a good sign. There's virtually no parallax whatsoever when you rotate a camera or a view in place. In fact, photographers use this to create stitched panoramas by swiveling their camera on a tripod without the background middle ground features moving around. Any parallax shifting would come from the camera shifting from its initial place. So if you really want parallax backgrounds and want to make a gallery shooter, check out rail shooter arcade games like Time Crisis, Area 51 or House of the Dead. Okay, it doesn't really help us, but like I suspected, it's sort of saying rotation doesn't actually lead to parallax. No, rotation moving at different speeds wouldn't work. That's not going to look like parallax. It's going to look like the universe is twisting. You know, like some kind of where it's twisting faster and slower. But I mean, we could try it to see if that creates an illusion. Yeah, but it will start to look like it's being kind of twisted against itself, right? Which isn't what we want. Someone's knocking on my door. 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Yo. I'm definitely willing to try that, Rob. Like if we had like the static background and then we have another layer. I mean, I could try it right now, couldn't I? Hold on. So if this one is like partially transparent. There you go. It's like that's having a layer moving and a layer still. I mean, it's not the worst. It does give a sense of some depth, doesn't it? Having some still objects in the background, and then other ones that are closer by. But it doesn't look. It looks better than the still one, doesn't it? But it doesn't look like particularly real. But maybe that is still the way to go. And they're spinning too quickly. They need to spin what's slower than the core is spinning itself, somewhere in between. So how would we do that then? So if the player I'm not convinced. Once they start spinning at a speed that is not the speed of the planet, it's gonna look like a twist. It won't. Okay, well, let's try it. How would I do that then? I need this one. Let's copy that and also put it there and have it here, and then remove it from there. But then that's still got its slight transparency on it, and then let's have the player know about background 2. And then whenever we rotate the background, we'll say background 2 rotation plus equals that divided by 5, let's say. So it's like be 20%, yeah? And that one with minus equals there. Yeah. That is trippy. It's not being rotated around the center though, is it? That's the problem with that, is that this now is not rotating around the middle. And why wouldn't it be? If I put that's rotating around its corner. So undo that. Anchors preset. Full rect. Does that do it? Oh, that's weird. Center. But now it's not showing me any. This is so weird. When it was at top left. I don't really understand how these things work. Do I need to transfer it? I think let's just see how it looks with this, because this is enough to test it, and then if it works, then cool. Pivot offset, that's what I need. Let's delete this one that I've messed up. Let's duplicate that. Is that still what it's called in the script? So it should still be okay. BG2, yeah, cool. And BG2 is gonna have in transform the pivot offset be 2500, and then when we rotate it, there we go. Close that, that's fine, or whatever, just delete that, that's fine. Save, it should now rotate around the middle. Okay, and then we want its visibility to be down. I mean, it's not bad. It makes the background layer look like they're moving forwards with us. Like I say, it makes it look like the two layers are moving against each other, because we're trying to create the illusion that this guy's moving, right? So when the ones at the background are still, it feels like they're moving with him. They don't feel still. The ones that are moving backwards feel like the still ones, and it feels like there's a layer of stars moving forwards with us. Do you see what I mean? Don't see another file in the Discord yet. Okay, yeah, boom, I've got it. So now we've got the transparent version to put on there, which means that now it doesn't need to be modulated anymore. And I suppose let's make it start slightly off. Or in fact, why don't we also just try BG1 as well. A planet building platformer, yes bruv. Slayertan, how are you? Will it have actual physics though? Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think we've kind of done most of the physics of what I was thinking we could do. But let's see, if I put normal background here to be divided by like 10, yeah? So we actually get a few layers moving in different speeds. Oh yeah, wait, hold on. Background one needs its pivot point moving as well. Yeah. I guess it's okay. I think maybe 3 and 6 or something instead, so it's like they move a bit faster. I don't know. I'm willing to be outvoted. I don't think it's hitting the spot for me, but maybe we need a layer of like nebula, like, you know what I mean, like gas clouds of different colors that could rotate very, very slowly in the background, and or like, I don't know. It certainly feels maybe like too busy as well, right? And also the glare on the stars being different, facing different angles. It's so obviously a flat rotating plane. And then and then of course we can fix this, but they line up at some point, which we can easily fix. It's like a delay effect. Not sure I know what you mean. I guess it's all right. It does feel to me like it doesn't deliver the like illusion that parallax does. It makes it all feel a bit unreal, but yeah, maybe it's just the textures are too busy, like you say, like if it's just dots. Right, so it's just like motion smoothing. Yeah, okay. That could work. That could certainly work. I mean, we are pretty high up now, right? Like, we've built quite a large planet here. Why don't we drop into one of these massive holes? It'd be fun, innit, if you get stuck in like one of these and you're like, I need to get out. And the dude's like chasing you. But yeah, we need the floors to trigger a bit more reliably, like in these holes. Sometimes they don't. When you're running along, it's totally fine. But when you're just jumping onto tiny locations. So there needs to be a lot more like robustness in the way the player decides when it can spawn a brick. Here it's this, like this bit here just needs to be more robust. It needs to be a little bit more flexible and like locking onto potential brick spawn points a little more readily. A little run cycle here. There you go, guys. Shout outs to Wob Rob for the art. That's what our little alien dude's gonna eventually look like. That does look great though. I love it. You could get the feathers like on the back of his head, like wafting a bit. And maybe the snout also, like, because the body feels really alive, but the head feels like it's just, so it kind of needs to change shape slightly, or like have its head feathers going. But yeah, man, that looks wicked as a first pass. That's great. Yeah, Pete's literally just right, get those feathers bobbing as well. Yeah, it's cool though. Sick. Yeah, right. Take the head side to side slightly. Yeah, nice. So the growing bricks. These are all these things are done now. going to make my list look nicer. So we can do like a nice little tick box situation, which is very satisfying to work through. And we'll say that I also want to add less strict brick spawning. Okay, and then these are like done. The growing bricks are done, the tidy collisions are done, and the polar grid is done. Oh baby. And then okay. I mean, Thursday's looking good, right? We've done most of all of this chaos that I started this morning is done, baby. And I do have to leave the house in about 10 minutes. I'm going out. I've got this band practice this evening between 6 and 8. So I thought it makes sense. I've had like a nearly 4-hour stream this afternoon. I'll get back from that band practice about 8:30. And we'll do probably about 4 more hours of streaming this evening. But yeah, that doesn't need to be saved. That can go. What would be cool? So if the brick had a reference to its polygon here, then when the player creates a brick, we could say like brick polygon color equals color red something, and then they should all just be red. It's the first test. Yeah, okay, nice. And then what if it was color and we go the red value is 100%. And then we kind of want to feed into the spawn brick. It's like it's radius, right? Like it's R, or maybe just RPOS, which is going to be an integer. An integer between 1 or 0 and num circles. So it'd be like they start red and they become more and more black. So yeah, so this would be just it's R pos over core num circles, and do the same for blue. So I'll start red. Will they get gradually darker? No, apparently not. Are they getting gradually lighter, turning white as we go up? That's kind of cool. whatever. I mean, that's fine for now, isn't it? How many numbers of circles are we working with at the moment? 20 layers. It's not bad, is it? But anyway, obviously what we should do instead is apply textures to these polygons, depending on what layer we're in. So we'll have like a few stony layers. Maybe start that at 0.5 instead. So they start kind of more like the same color as that. They start to get cyan. Oh, and that was we went over 20 layers then. Fun. But I think we sort of have like the fundamentals mostly worked out now. We just need to get like sort of the enemy and like make reasons for the player to jump and reasons for the player to run. So it's all about the enemy now, which maybe is what I'll spend. Didn't need to open that. I thought that was still there. Maybe that's what I should spend this evening on then. I mean, the less strict brick spawning, but obstacles, projectiles, enemy destroying terrain. We could just get started on Friday stuff tonight, maybe. We've got to have slimes. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of potentials. Anyway, I'm going to call it for this stream. But I will be back, like I said, about 8:30, 9 o'clock this evening. So what's that? In about 4 hours' time. Yeah, in about 4 hours, I'll be back, and we'll do another 4 hours work. I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. Like, yeah, if you had reasons to run around and there's something flying around fighting you, that'd be cool. And yeah, I don't know about running left and right. I think is good for moments when you like take a wrong turn like this and you're like, oh, I need to go back, you know, and get out. But we need something that propels the player around in one direction, some reason to keep racing from left to right. And you can see all that's bad. You know, you've created some terrain there that you can't easily navigate, and so that's where the player has to be planning ahead. And maybe the player's jump should be big enough that they can go up 2 layers, because at the moment our jump isn't big enough for that. So if the player just was ever so slightly better at jumping. There we go. Here we can get up 2 layers now. I think that's good. And that's good for the player to be able to just be a little bit more nimble. Yeah, cool. All right, well, look, nice one, people. Thanks for watching. Follow, subscribe, share, and tune back in 4 hours' time for more. And I'll see you then. And Peace. Be excellent to each other. I'll catch you later. Nice one.